University. We've been talking about the solving of crimes, new statistics suggesting that theft and burglary in particular not being solved at a satisfactory rate, which anecdotally lots of us could have told you, but it's been counted. We got violently burgled, says this text, a couple of years ago. We live in a busy village. It took police 1 month to appear, let alone to solve it, to appear at all. End result, we had to leave the house as my daughter's trauma was so bad. She didn't want to stay there. Police were useless, couldn't care any less. Those that did never got dealt with, and the police didn't bother to turn up. It's about time they stopped trying to deal with the easy stuff and money spinners and started to deal with the hardened criminals. I mean, that must be appalling if you've got violent. I mean, it is in a sense an act of violence to enter somebody's home at all, but I can absolutely see why you'd wish to leave or why you'd be traumatised if there was violence involved. Mohajid says, I don't really understand why people are surprised, why the police are so bad. The Federation was accused of crying wolf by Theresa May some years ago when it requested resources and more money for policing. The question you should really ask is, why do people constantly vote against their own interests? Peter has called from Suffolk. Hi, Peter.
Hello there. Thanks for having us on. My call is really regarding a problem that we've had with Suffolk Police over a 5-year period. We moved into a house in near Ipswich, and we moved into a neighbour dispute that hadn't been disclosed, and effectively we actually asked the police into our house to deal with it and to help us out to deal with this problem neighbour. The biggest mistake I ever made, to be totally honest. Suffolk Police have been so woeful in dealing with our problems and concerns that at the height of the pandemic, a police officer that we complained about 2 weeks previously ended up in my house, arresting me for stealing an A4 piece of paper with private property on off my own tree. We had it all on tape, all on video, because my office is CCTV.
What tree? What's the relationship between the tree and the piece of paper?
The piece of paper, effectively we had a boundary dispute, and the boundary dispute was getting rather nasty, and we wanted to take it. We wrote to the chief constable of Suffolk Police to make sure that we had permission to take tree out. We weren't breaking COVID regulations. To take this hedge out that had been decimated by our neighbour, to put a fence up. Right, we had a letter from the assistant chief constable of Suffolk Police saying that was okay.
Who would be the normal arbiter in that? Wouldn't it be the local council?
We had local council involvement, right? Total useless, all right? Council turn around and say civil matter. The police used to turn around and say civil matter. But whenever we did anything, it suddenly became a criminal matter. And the reasons why our house, or next door's house, used to be owned by a police officer sergeant. And our neighbour has dined out on that for the last 5 years. Okay?
You got your fence?
We've been on the back foot. We've been on the back foot for 5 years. The worst thing is about this is I'm diabetic, asthmatic, and I was arrested, taken away in handcuffs for stealing an A4 piece of paper off my own tree. When we complained to Suffolk Police, okay, about this procedure and about the downright breaking of pace regulations, okay, we have gone chapter and verse. We've spent £48,000 to solicitors, £8,000 dealing with the police, okay.
Over a fence? Over a fence?
Over a fence. Now,
why so much?
Because I've had to employ solicitors, barristers.
Yeah, but can you live with the hedge rather than blow 50 grand?
Our neighbour literally would make our life miserable. We had a neighbour who was pointing telegraphic lenses into our front living room. When we provided the Suffolk Police with photographic evidence of it, they took no notice.
That's stalking.
They haven't taken one statement.
That's stalking.
They haven't taken one statement from us in 5 years. One statement.
Did you accuse them of stalking because that's what they were doing?
Yes, I had. We have not had a single process of pace regulations followed, I've actually had slate thrown over my head, and when I pushed my neighbour back after spitting on my face, I had video evidence of it. Video evidence. Right? I had 5 police officers in my house actually arrested me for the second time. I have all of this on video. Every single bit of it. I have a policeman in my office arresting me and actually charging me with stealing theft for an A4 piece of paper which said private property on it.
I think you need to go to the police ombudsman, Peter, by the sounds of it, if it's got as out of hand as you're describing. I'm still not particularly clear why there's a piece of paper in the tree, but that seems a lot of money to spend. But there's clear confusion around what the police think they're dealing with, because poking a lens through a hedge to film you in your home is a crime, a very, very serious one. So, yeah, I'd shift the goalpost a bit if I were you, Peter. Thank you very much for your call. It's 3:47.
Coming up at 4 on LBC, Ian Payne.
And in today's strike news, it's the railways, passport control at airports, and a 5-day driving instructors strike. Are you still on their side?
Ian Payne on LBC.
At Kia, we believe to find inspiration, you have to move. Our Kia Inspire event features exclusive offers on selected models like the Kia Exceed, Sportage, Stonic and Picanto. Get your first 2 services free, 7.9% APR representative and up to £2,500 PCP deposit contribution. Plus, these models will be available sooner than you think. Search Kia Inspire event. Kia, movement that inspires. T's and C's apply. Petrol models only. Kia Finance ends 28th of February.
If I need an eye test, I don't go to Specsavers.
One thing you won't see at Specsavers is me.
Do I go? Yes! Me? I don't go to Specsavers. Nor you, Spike.
Should have gone to Specsavers. Nah.
Hi, Specsavers. Here for your eye test.
They come to me instead. Come in, kettle's on.
If you can't go to Specsavers unaccompanied, we could come to you. See if you're eligible at specsavers.co.uk/home visits.
Hi, Nick Knowles here. These days we're all concerned with the rising price of energy and how to be more sustainable. But the team at Euronics have got some great solutions. For example, did you know heat pump tumble dryers are the most energy efficient of all the tumble dryer types? With brands such as Blomberg, Bosch and Siemens to choose from, and with over 600 Euronics stores nationwide, you can just pop in or give them a call. For great local service, just ask.
Euronics. 15% of global deforestation is from toilet roll alone. But switch to Serious Tissues and they don't cut down trees. In fact, Serious Tissues plant a tree for every roll sold. Serious Tissues are carbon neutral. They're cleverly made from recycled paper in the UK. So instead of cutting down trees, you can plant a forest from your bathroom. Subscribe today for 10% off and free shipping at serioustissues.com.
Why is this not working?
There's a bit of a trick to the flush. Do you need a hand?
Bathroom causing you a little house embarrassment? Let Wix create your dream bathroom from design to installation. And now there's up to 20% off bathroom products from the showroom range. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For more information and to book your free design appointment, visit wix.co.uk.
The Maldives, where you can relax on white sand beaches, under gently swaying coconut trees, and dive into crystal clear waters to swim with the local wildlife. Or you can dive into the beach parties, bonfires and cocktails of the local nightlife. Virgin Atlantic will be flying to the Maldives from October 2023. But how you see it is up to you. Book now with Virgin Atlantic Holidays.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC with Sheila Fogarty.
I think our previous call is an example of how varied and tricky the job of policing can be. I don't know that story in full. I've just heard the experience that our caller had, but the police, if they've ignored some of the elements that he's described, are clearly getting something badly wrong. And I think there is a tendency to assume that because the difficulty is between neighbours, it's somehow just a twee little bit of nonsense, a little local difficulty that can be solved with a little chat. It's not always the case. It's not always the case. Do you remember when I talked about stalking a few months ago, and we had D.I.Lee Bernard in here taking calls, and a woman rang who was without a doubt being harassed and stalked by her next door neighbour, without a doubt. And it was treated entirely like a neighbourly dispute, as though there was some equity in their behaviour, and there simply wasn't. There was no equity, no equality in their behaviour, no similarities. One was stalking the other. It wasn't a personality clash. Difficult. Sheila, another Sheila has called from Slough. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Sheila. Good afternoon to you. I hope you can hear me. I completely sympathise with the gentleman who called before, but I was actually calling in response to the lawyer who called about having the two police officers waste time in his words about sitting with that patient or the client, whatever you want to call him, the prisoner. And I would just say that actually it's very easy to say that, people and employees which are our police officers, they should be doing something else rather than just doing that. If they've been resourced to do that, we need to protect our police officers. So, if there's any allegation ever made against the police officer, it's absolutely, important that there is a third party or a witness, and it's quite good for accountability of actions to make sure that, people are responsible and answerable to their actions. So, if there is a police officer who's been tasked with something, usually in those kind of scenarios, you do need to have somebody attend with them because that's a witness. So that's more about resourcing and numbers and police officers not being enough in the organisation.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at the reasons why officers are leaving, partly it's because there is no support mechanism. Our society has changed dramatically from days gone by when the gentleman called up in the Churchill Aid, where there was a lot more respect for the police force and the work that they do. You see it at the moment wherever you go, whenever there is ever, if you get to see a police officer on the street, there's not really much respect, especially from the youth. So the job has changed in itself. So I think allegations about, mate, you've detained me, you can't stop me, I know my rights, whenever somebody's, pulled up by a police officer, that, you need to have absolutely 100% more training and more numbers. And officers are leaving, so I think a lot of work has to be done as to finding out why they're leaving.
Yeah, and I remember the business of being an officer on your own. I mean, I remember speaking to a female, now former, she'd left for this reason because of this incident, a former Metropolitan Police officer, a woman, and she had gone to a job and because it was an emergency and she had to get there fast, and she just went there as fast as she could on her own and got herself into a situation of great difficulty and danger, and thankfully got out of it alive, but it was hit and miss, and she was so traumatized by it that she couldn't continue in the job. So
100%,
they're human, aren't they?
And that's the other thing. Yeah, it's not like another caller said, it's not a job that everyone can do, and quite rightly it isn't. So people go there for a specific reason, and they should be remunerated properly, so that they do odd hours, they take a lot of abuse on the street, and they see a side of society that you and I probably don't want to, right?
Yeah.
So
without a doubt, they'll see lots of people at their worst, won't they?
Yeah. So I think honestly, in the mix there's a large number of ingredients, but I think that there should be a certain amount of respect that the job has changed now, and if any allegation is made by a public member to say that officer has treated me wrongly or not in accordance to process, policy or pace, like the gentleman was saying before, a whole process is started that takes absolutely ages for it to be investigated internally, and that whole time that individual, the employee officer, is subjected to quite a lot of stress, because with that investigation comes, is it a misconduct issue, is it a gross misconduct issue, what's the repercussions for him in his job? So, I'm very mindful that actually this job has changed a lot and society has changed a lot, and our expectations from them sometimes have not. And I don't think as a society generally we appreciate what some officers put.
Yeah, I agree, and I think for those good officers it's going to be a very painful experience when that full report comes out, the Casey report in the new year, because I don't think it's going to make pretty reading by any means. Thank you very much, Sheila. Sheila in Slough. John has called from Feltham. Hi, John.
Hi. Well, we call new normal just for the climate, but I think this is a new normal. Not enough police. You said yourself there are more leaving than joining. And we got the NHS, not enough. And
some of that's retirement.
And we've got so many things going on, haven't we? The housing crisis, the living cost crisis, the energy crisis, food crisis. Not enough police, not enough GPs, not enough ambulance drivers, not enough home care workers. You know, it's a new normal, really. I can't see how we can fix it. And so we're just going to have to get used to it. Sort of coming up to
I think it can be fixed. All of those problems you described aren't going to be fixed quickly, but I think it can be fixed to a degree or improved upon by better political decisions, by some challenging choices that politicians are going to have to ask all of us to make. I'm thinking of taxation when I say that. I think we have to try and travel hopefully. It's not easy to.
Let's hope so, but I can't see how it will, based on the Tory government and even the Labour government said 13,000. And as I say, you said there's more leaving than there are joining. So I don't see how a lot of these things can be fixed. There's just too many things to fix. It's like a house. If you've got one problem, you can fix it. But let's say you're being flooded in the cellar and your roof is falling down and
your walls are rotten.
Windows are being broken. And
oh, well, I hope we're not that bad yet, John. I hope it's not that bad. My goodness. A quick word with Brian in Wigan before we go. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Sheila. My points are, I think we need more training of officers because some of them are their own worst enemies, and we need more money into the force.
In their manner, you mean? Their attitude?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I asked someone the first name, and you don't need to know my name, which is fair enough, I suppose. But just to give you a quick example, I was arguing with my partner and my next door neighbour phoned the police and said that he'd heard raised voices for more than 15 minutes, which was unacceptable to him. So four police officers came and arrested me, handcuffed me, took me to the station for 5 hours, and no further action was taken. I think.
What was the shouting?
It was just an arguing, rowing. In
your house?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily an arrestable offence.
No, but I was. Apparently it's common assault now if you argue with someone.
Oh. I better be careful on air then. Brian, thank you. Brian in Wigan. Just a word on those 1,300 figures for Labour. That pledge that I mentioned at the beginning of the programme, the party's talking specifically about 13,000 extra neighbourhood officers and PCSOs out on the beat. So that's what that's specific to. That's it from me. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, where you'll also find LBC shows to catch up on all of them, as well as all of Global's live radio stations. Download Global Player for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Coming up at 7 on LBC, it's Rachel Johnson, but now Ian Payne.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Good afternoon, everybody. So it's December the 28th, and we have more strikes today affecting airports, railways and driving tests. Border Force are beginning the second in a series of strikes at major UK airports. Around 1,000 members of the PCS union, many of whom work in passport control, are walking out until the new year. Military personnel are being drafted in again as cover. Rail disruption continues today and tomorrow with TSSA union members at Great Western Railways and West Midlands trains on strike. We'll speak to a union rep in a second. And driving examiners starting a 5-day strike today. So, are you still a supporter of the industrial action, or are you beginning to lose patience?
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 4 o'clock, 2 men in their 20s are being held over the murder of a man on the dance floor of a nightclub in Birmingham. Cody Fisher was stabbed to death at Crane in Digbeth late on Boxing Day evening. The semi-professional footballer had been approached by a group. Patrick Green is chief executive of the anti-knife crime charity, the Ben Kinsella Trust.
We've certainly seen a change since we've come out of COVID. Prior to COVID, we'd seen knife crime at record numbers across the country. country that dissipated somewhat during the lockdown period. But sadly, we're seeing far more violent incidents recently, and we are seeing more young people getting caught up in violence.
Southwestern Ambulance Service has declared a critical incident. It's urging people to think carefully before dialing 999 because of what it's described as extreme pressures. Figures show 482 patients were waiting for ambulances across the region late this morning. Pope Francis has urged people to pray for his predecessor, Benedict XVI. A statement from the Vatican says the former Pope is under constant medical care because his condition has worsened. The 95-year-old stood down as leader of the Catholic Church in 2013. Figures from the Met Office show 2022 will be the warmest year on record in the UK. The average temperature is on track to beat the previous high of 9.88 Celsius in 2014. The National Trust has issued a separate warning about the impact of extreme weather on Britain's wildlife. Conservationist Ben McCarthy says more work is needed to support habitat.
Establishing woodlands, for example, which suck out carbon out of the atmosphere and lock it away. In a similar way, restoring our peatlands does the same, locking away carbon in their peaty soils.
The satirist, actor and comedian John Bird has died aged 86. He was best known for performing sketches alongside John Fortune and for their Channel 4 show with Rory Bremner. Bremner's described Bird as one of our greatest satirists and a pillar of the anti-establishment. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was up 21 at 74.94. The pound buys $1.20 and a euro 13. And the weather, rain moving across the UK into this evening, reaching northern Scotland with some clearer spells in the West Country and a high of 12 Celsius. From Global's newsroom, I'm Thomas Watt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ian Payne.
Very good afternoon to you. Ian Payne with you until 7 o'clock all this week. It's 3.5 minutes past 4. It's Wednesday. It's December the 28th, and we have more strikes today in 3 particular industries: airports, passport control, railways, and driving instructors as well. We're going to concentrate for the start of this hour on the railways, and train passengers across Britain are being warned to expect disruption into the new year as rail strikes continue. There's even been a suggestion that the strikes could continue for 6 months. Members of the Transport Salaried Staffs Association, the TSSA, at cross country began a 24-hour strike from 9 o'clock GMT on Boxing Day, and more TSSA members at Great Western Railways and West Midlands trains walking out today and tomorrow. RMT union members at Network Rail are going to resume strikes over pay and conditions on Tuesday the 3rd and Wednesday the 4th. The TSSA strikes part of a long-running campaign for a guarantee of no compulsory redundancies, no unagreed changes to terms and conditions, and a pay increase which addresses the rising cost of living. Members of the Great Western Railway will go on strike from noon today, or have been on strike from noon today until midnight on Thursday, and at West Midlands trains from noon on Wednesday to noon on Thursday. The strike involves staff who work in customer service management, driver management, training, control, customer communications, safety, timetabling and planning. Have you been affected by the strikes? Are you still on the strikers' side? Are you beginning to have your patience tested? And what about the suggestion from some union leaders that the strikes could, if the government remains entrenched in its position and digging its heels in, could go on for another 6 months? Are you ready for that? You know what to do. Give us a ring. Tell us what you think. 0345 6060 973. Let's talk about this with Nadine Ray, who is the organising director at the Transport Salaried Staffs Association, the TSSA. Thank you for joining us, Nadine. Can you just explain which services are going to be affected over the next 2 days, please?
Thanks, Ian, for having me on today. You've summarised that really well. We had some disruption with cross-country yesterday, and our members at West Midlands Trains and Great Western Railway are out today and partly tomorrow. So there'll be a significant impact and some severely reduced services if they end up running trains at all. So that there is a question of that, of course, and that is because our members, rail workers, they simply want some job security and a fair pay increase in the face of this cost of living crisis. Because next week they'll be going into their 4th year of no pay increase, meaning their wages have been stuck for 4 years, but costs, of course, are skyrocketing, and everyone is feeling that crunch.
Okay.
So we do need the government to make a move here, because they have to give that permission for the employers to produce a deal for us, and that is what is going to end this.
Right. Well, let's pardon the pun. Let's see if we can get some light at the end of the tunnel, because members of your union, the TSSA, employed by Network Rail, which owns and maintains the UK's rail system, have now finally agreed a deal over pay and conditions. They'll get at least 9% wage rise over 2 years, and there'll be no compulsory redundancies until the end of January 2025. Would that be satisfactory for your side in your current dispute?
Well, that is an example of where we've been able to negotiate with the company. We've found an agreement that is both affordable to the company and acceptable to our members. We need to still find that for the train operating companies. However, we had 4 weeks of negotiations prior to Christmas, so we've been in talks with them. We've been in talks with them the longest, and yet what came out of that at the very end was something that looked entirely different from the discussions we had. And so that, to us, showed that the government was interfering at the very end there. It was interfering with the process of negotiation. The difference now, as opposed to years of the negotiations we've done in the past with employers, is because since the pandemic, the government's taken control of many of those contracts with train operating companies. And so they have to give it that express permission. So we're confident we can find a deal, but it's up to the government to allow that to go ahead.
Okay, I don't want to give away the secrecy of the meetings that you're actually having, but again, I will ask you, I'm trying to sort of pin this down, because we all want these things to end now, and particularly your members who are losing money.